Hello everyone, my name is Amber. Welcome to my channel, Amber Reads Romance. Today I'm here with another weekly wrap-up and I have a new favorite to gush about. I'm sure I'll be talking a lot about it because I am so excited by this book. But I have 7 books to go over. One of them was a really big one, so let's quickly dive into my weekly reads. Okay guys, so let's go ahead and talk about the 7 books I read this week. I am actually pretty impressed that I read 7 because I felt like I didn't read that much considering the first book was a clunker. It is a big book that I needed to focus on because it is the 6th book in the Outlander series. If you don't know, I am participating in the Outlander read-along that Jen from the Book Refuge is doing. And so I really needed to finish this book because I think she's doing her live show on the 3rd of November. So I really needed to focus on it. And that is A Breath of Snow and Ashes. I'm sorry if my ring light's hitting this because it's pretty silver shiny here going on. But this is the 6th book in the Outlander series. And I was worried because I had really struggled with the Fiery Cross. Honestly, like if I wasn't doing this read along, I probably would have given up. That book really frustrated me. It was so long. And like nothing really happened, at least to me. It felt very slow. The pacing just, her books are very wordy. She explains everything. She goes into great detail. I think she is a phenomenal writer. But in that one, if there's not a lot of plot going on to drive the story, you're losing me. And so I was kind of zoning out for half that book. And I was just frustrated. But I am happy to say that this book is maybe one of my favorites in the series. So much happened in this book. And again, I can't really go into details because this is the 6th book in Jamie and Claire's story. But they are in America. They, are going through a lot of conflict with neighbors and different communities, along with the fact that Jamie is in a really difficult spot because, the war is approaching and he had, got his land from like the British and kind of signed on to have him and his militia be able to fight for the crown and stuff. And he knows what's going to happen. He knows that they will lose and America will become what it is. So he needs to find that perfect balance and like when to dip out and what's going to be safe for his people, because with his land, he has, a whole community, a lot of Scottish people moved out there that he's responsible for. So there's just a lot more complications that go into that. But this book was very heavy. Claire goes through so much in this book. It is heartbreaking. Her journey and struggles are so hard to read. I cried a couple times in this. I can't really say a lot, but I will say that there is a trigger warning for sexual assault in this. So be prepared. Obviously, if you're further in Outlander or if you've read the first one, you're no stranger to the sexual assault that can happen in her books. So, but this one was pretty tough. I kind of knew it would be when, I already watched the show and I hadn't gotten that far in the book. So, I don't know. It was tough, but I really loved this book. Everything that Claire goes through, her and Jamie's relationship is just such a solid, beautiful foundation, and they are just soulmates. They're really fated mates to me. Jamie Fraser is king as always. So many swoon-worthy lines that he does. But I mean, as you can see, this is a thick book. So, and it's got pretty small font. I listened to the audiobook along with my ebook highlighting because I'm planning on annotating this whole series. But it's pretty close to depending on your version that you have, this is I think 990 something. So it's pretty close to 1,000 pages. It's heavy. But it was a fantastic one. I just think there's so much that happens in this. I love seeing more of young Ian. I love him so much. He was one of the parts where I cried about hearing his backstory. Again, like if you haven't read any of these, you don't really know what I'm talking about, but I absolutely loved it. So I can't really go into too much detail because I don't want to give things away. But it just know that if you maybe stopped at Fiery Cross because it wasn't for you, you didn't really feel like anything happened, I would say try to pick up this book and see if it captivates you like it did me. Again, it is a long book, so you know it's gonna take you a bit to get through it, but I do think it's a really profound and like impactful story. The romance is there between Jamie and Claire as always, but it's more about this world that they're living in and a lot of the historical fiction that we're reading about that time, and I just think it's really fascinating. So I loved it. I ended up giving that one 5 stars, and I definitely recommend reading the Outlander series if you're okay with these long books. It is a big commitment, but I recommend them. Okay, so then I listened to an ALC, and I listened to Finding Hayes by Laura Pavlov. This is the 5th and final book in the Magnolia Falls series. Honestly, this is my second book. I listened to the first book. I got the the previous book. I got an ALC for that, and I loved it. I had never read Laura Pavlov before, and so I really wanted to get this one too. And so I think, you know, you probably would be even better, obviously, if you've read the entire series. And I kind of want to go back and read the beginning of the series because I really loved her writing. This small town, very sweet. It's just feel good kind of romance. So in this, we have Hayes and Savannah. And Hayes is a firefighter. He's a pretty serious, kind of grumpy guy. But he's worked really hard, and he's kind of further up in the firefighter, like to where he doesn't fully want to be a boss and all that kind of stuff. But he heard that his old childhood friend Savannah is in town because I don't know the whole backstory because he's probably brought up in the other books, but this character named Abe, he's kind of was like a fatherly figure for her because she had a lot of stuff go on with her family that was very hard for her. And so she's returned to town to do his funeral, and like there was a reading of the will and all that stuff. And he actually communicated with her, like they talked like every day, her and Abe, the older man. So they had a very close relationship. But he has not talked to her since she left when she was 16. They were like super, super close best friends. They both kind of liked each other more than that, but didn't really know. And she kind of left and cut off all contact with him. You'll find out that he wrote letters that never went to her. Like he called her all the time, but she blocked him. And so he was really devastated because at that time he was going through a lot. And I think more of that is known from like the first few books from like his friends. But he really wants to see her. So he kind of runs into her at the bar and tries to kind of like talk to her, and she's being very cold to him, and he doesn't really understand why. Like, why did she abandon me? Why did she leave and cut me off? And now why is she acting like I'm the bad guy? And so, you know, we kind of learn that, of course, it was like a miscommunication that, you know, can be kind of irritating. I will say it is irritating when you find out why she hates him. But I kind of gave her because she was 16, and, you know, at 16, we don't really think things through or try to communicate with somebody to find out what's going on. You jump to conclusions and you're immature. So I kind of forgave that. But what ends up happening in this is she, at the reading of the will, Abe basically left his house that he wants her to like renovate because they always talked about doing that together, and a lot of money. But he has stipulations that she has to get married in like 30 days. So she ends up getting, you know, thinking, okay, well, that's not going to be able to happen. I can stay there till the 30 days is up and then I'll just go. She had just recently lost her job. She's in a bad financial situation. And she keeps kind of running into Hayes during this, like a broken down car and this and that. And he ends up going with her, giving her a ride to like her lawyer to go talk to the lawyer about everything. And so they kind of come up with a plan by them running into each other and him being there. He kind of offers to be her, short-term fake husband, and that they'll get married and stay together for a while so that she can get the house and the money. And then it kind of helps him because it helps him look better for like that job of when his chief or whatever retires. So they end up getting into this marriage of convenience, and now you have a forced proximity thing. And so it was frustrating because you just wanted them to talk to each other. But when they finally kind of clear the air and they find out why they stopped talking, they can't deny their connection because they were best friends, and you can tell they're just perfect for each other. I do have to say, the boy from the previous book that I read, they all call him Beefcake. He once again was in this and like stole the show. I love this kid so much. Like, he is like a star in this series, and I hope one day like we'll get his romance like when he grows up, because this kid is friggin' adorable. This was narrated by Andy Arndt and Lee Samuels. And I really love the audiobook. These audiobooks are very well done. So I end up really loving it, even though it has that miscommunication. It was understandable, and I just love their friends to lovers and how close and supportive they were for each other. So I ended up giving this one 5 stars and 3 chilies. Okay, so the next book is kind of tough for me because I was really excited to read this book. I had seen Jen loved it on the Book Refuge, and I've seen it making the rounds, and so I was dying to get this. And that is Sovereign by Rhea Morris Edwards. This is the first book in the Sovereign Mountain series. And it took me a while to get through this book, and it really shouldn't have taken as long as it did for me to read it. But it was pretty tough for me. So in this, we have Gerard Sovereign and then Kira. And Kira is basically kind of put into this almost like arranged marriage. She's kind of sold off to this other rancher. He like kind of owned the neighboring ranch of her family, and she kind of basically gets married to him, and he takes over and owns the rest of her ranch. So he kind of used her, and she's in this loveless, like pretty bad marriage where he doesn't pay any attention to her. He's not like abusive, but he's very neglectful, and he just kind of has sex with her and doesn't worry about pleasing her, and she's like always like very not into it. So she doesn't really have the best life, but she was kind of also raised by his family too and took it in. So it's like you can kind of tell she was almost like groomed from this family to just take what was given to her and shut up, and she had to like feed the whole ranch, and she was like an employee to him. So she's not in a very happy marriage. And her husband ends up having this meeting with Sovereign, who's Gerard, but they all call him Sovereign, and he owns like the biggest ranch. And him and her husband's family have hated each other. They have a a very bad like hatred feud type thing. She doesn't really know anything about that, but he meets with them to do like this business. And when Sovereign sees her, he is immediately like obsessed with her and wants her. So he kind of puts plans into motion that he is going to get her. He doesn't know how long it'll take, but he's going to get her. And so her husband mysteriously dies, although she thinks it's an accident, when he was doing like a business meeting with him where he got like a stampede of the steer or whatever got him. And then like the ranch and everything was left to her. Then you kind of jump 7 months later, and his brothers have been like contesting this will and fighting her for it, and they did lose. But she ends up getting invited to a dinner with Sovereign, and he kind of is putting his plan into motion because he basically kind of owns these banks and owns this land, and her husband was in debt, and so he owed all this money to the bank, and so that part of that land is now owned by him, and she's supposed to be paying him. So he basically puts into a thing of like, I want you to be my submissive for whatever, and then that'll be your debt paid. But he plans on like really never letting her go. So she's kind of shocked by this. She's very into him. She's very turned on by him. She's been thinking about him since she met him. But he basically wants her to be He's submissive, and he wants to protect her because the brothers are kind of coming after her and it's getting kind of dangerous. And so he has a whole contract and all this kind of stuff. And so they end up into this kind of agreement of this sub-dom dynamic. So I love BDSM and romance. I really love BDSM as healing. I think this really just didn't work for me. I didn't see any BDSM as healing. I just saw repetitive sex and BDSM scenes that were boring the fuck out of me. Like, it was so repetitive and there was like no emotional connection. So it's really hard for me because after you read something like Dark Notes by Pam Godwin, where that's like actual BDSM is healing and it's very emotional and you feel these characters and how they open up to each other and the trust and how he helps build her up and show her the power she has as a submissive. None of that is in this. So it's like kind of tough for me because I'm like, this just felt very surface level, no connection, and just a bunch of smut. And that was my problem. I think the first 30% was pretty good. And honestly, like the last 50, I was like skimming a lot of it because it was just nonstop sex. I'm also realized I'm not really a fan of the full-time BDSM dynamic where she has to call him sir all the time. She can't speak her mind. She always has to be the submissive, and I just don't like that. I like, you know, when they have they have a scene together, they do the BDSM in the bedroom, but you can still be in a relationship. So I just don't really love that dynamic. Another thing, I just hate degradation. I honestly need that, which I'm not saying this book doesn't have this, but I kind of need that as a trigger warning because I've come to the point where, like, I can't fucking take it anymore. If you call her a whore and a dirty slut and just, like, talk down to her throughout every sex scene, like, I'm turned the fuck off, and I hate it. So I just really struggled with this one. I mean, I think it had so much promise. I think it could have been really great. But it was just so much. And then you get to the third act conflict where, like, you know, it's danger and rescuing and all this stuff. And when that gets resolved, you think, okay, wait, we're not even near the end here. And then it's like, then you just have repetitive sex scenes and we got to fit an anal scene in after that. And it's just another BDSM and now another chapter of another BDSM thing. And I was just like, I'm over this. When is it going to end? So I had a tough time with this. Oh, one more thing. I cannot handle when an author explains something to be descriptive, like something about their scent or whatever color that they're wearing all the time, and they bring it up the entire book. The amount of times that I had to hear him smell her pomegranate shampoo. He inhaled her pomegranate shampoo. Her pillow smelled like pomegranate. I was like, shut up. Anyways, that just got on my nerves. So you're going to be surprised because I actually gave this 3.5 stars. And I did that because I thought the first part of the book was really good and hooked me and had a really good setup. I just think the constant smut and sex brought it down. So I was kind of nice and I did give it 3.5 stars. It's probably a 3. I mean, I didn't hate it by any means, but I do think it could have been like almost 100 pages less smut and it would have been a really good book. So anyway, so I gave it 3.5 stars and 4 chilies. Then I listened to an ALC of Black Heart by Ketley Allison. This is the first time I've ever read this author. This audiobook hooked me from the start. This is a romantic suspense, and it was intense. So in this, we have Caden Black. He's also known as the Scythe. He is basically an assassin. He's kind of turned to be an assassin after the death of his daughter. He had a very tragic death, and he's been hunting down the man that is responsible for the death of his daughter. And so he became this ruthless assassin, and he is badass. So he actually gets hired to kill our heroine in this, which is Layla. And Layla actually works like kind of for a tech company, very like, you know, like hacking kind of skills that she has, and she overhears the wrong thing after hours, And she, obviously somebody knows she overheard that because they are hiring somebody to kill her. She finds out her boss is kind of working with the mafia and this big mafia, Don, with this special AI that could really bring havoc to the world. And so she is, in danger, and this guy, he finds out about that. He's obviously not going to kill her because he usually kills bad guys and stuff. He doesn't really go after women, and he kind of knows something's up here. So from his stalking and trying to figure out what's going on, he kind of finds out that the guy that is responsible for going after her is the man that he blames for his daughter's death. So he is kind of stalking her, have her under surveillance. He literally puts cameras, like a security system into her house that she can't figure out how to deactivate. And so she knows somebody's watching her. She had kind of ran into this guy on the street. And then now she's got this mask because he wears like this tactical mask guy watching her. And he's just letting her know, you're in danger and blah, blah, and I'm going to keep you safe. And so they end up kind of working together at one point to try and set a trap, or he's kind of keeping an eye on her so that he could get to the boss and find him and kill him because he's very elusive. So I really loved this. It was intense, but I do have to warn you, it has a huge cliffhanger, and I thought it was a standalone. So I don't know if it was just me or if it wasn't really marketed that way, but it didn't list like a series like #1 or whatever on Goodreads. So it wasn't like under a series or a duet or anything. So I was kind of pissed when it was like a cliffhanger, like a big cliffhanger where it's not the end of their stories. There's no happily for now. Like, it's a big cliffhanger. And it's a lot of like not them being good, but like, the suspense elements. So I'm definitely interested. I want to read the next one. But this audiobook was so well done. It was duet narration, and it was narrated by Wesley Mercer and Hannah Chiclana. And I have to say, it was so hot because this male narrator, I don't think I've ever listened to anything with Wesley Mercer, but he was fantastic. And when he was ever in the tactical mask and stuff, or spying and talking to her through like the cameras in her house, it would have like that distorted voice. And so it was giving me major Kylo Ren vibes. So already like masked Kylo Ren type of like deep, sexy voice. And he would like talk dirty to her in that voice. And it was just hot. It was hot. So I had a fantastic time with this narration. It was a really good audiobook. So even though it had that cliffhanger, it hooked me. I listened to it like in one sitting. I couldn't put it down. It was fantastic to me. So I ended up giving this one 5 stars and 3 chilies, even though there's not a ton of spice, like the dirty talk, and there's some like, other stuff besides sex that happens that is pretty hot. So I really had a great time with this, and I definitely already looked up the second book. I think it's coming out in January 2025, so I really want to get that one. Okay, so now I want to go over basically my standout, my gushing book I'm going to gush about right now because this was phenomenal. So I actually already bought it. Like, I went on Amazon in the middle of reading this book and bought it because I was loving every minute of it. So I read Hawke by Jescie Hall, and this book blew me away. This was actually on my 12 Recs from 12 Friends, bookmarked by Jen. I actually recommend this, so thank you, Jen. I actually had another Jescie Hall on my 12 Recs from 12 Friends, which was That Sick Love. And I thought it was okay. It was just like really trying super hard to be super dark. And it was interesting though. That was my first Jescie Hall. I read Green Light for our buddy read, and it didn't really blow me away. I didn't really like that one. There was a lot of issues I had with it, even though I read it super fast. And she has amazing writing where she sucks you in, and sometimes she can be very like poetic and eloquent, and it's just, I really love her writing. But her books haven't blown me away yet, so I was kind of nervous to read this. You see things blow up on Book Talk or Bookstagram and stuff, and you're just like, is it actually good, or is this like a Book Talk thing? But I was so impressed with this book. So anyways, what this book is about is Hawke, and that's the name of our hero in this. And he is actually an ex-con, and he ends up becoming the kind of unaware. Our heroine had no idea he was going to be her roommate. So our heroine, her name is Nicole, but she goes by Nick. And she's been in a long-term relationship with her boyfriend for like a few years, since like college. She basically picked up her life and moved back to his hometown with him. They got a house together, and she's very like just settled into their relationship and feels like their end game. She's not like really that happy, but she kind of just settled. She thinks he's a good guy, and you know, he takes care of her and all of that, so she should be happy. But like their sex life is pretty not great. She's never even had an orgasm with him. He's not really attentive to her needs, but he comes from a very rich family, and they're very well to do in this town. And so she just kind of takes it, honestly. So it's kind of a sad thing to see in this. But she had no idea. All of a sudden, like after her boyfriend left, she took a nap and she heard like sex in the next room. And she like went in there, and Hawke is in there, and he's having sex with some random chick. She doesn't even know who he is, so she's like calling 911, like I have an intruder in my house. And it ends up being, used to be Hawke's house, and he has gotten out of prison. And so her boyfriend said he could stay there, you know, to do the right thing, to try and help him out. And she does not want this guy in her house. He is a tatted, sexy, I mean, this guy, he is hot, the way Jescie describes him, and totally the opposite of what she thinks her type would be. And she really does judge the book by its cover in a really unfair way. She really judges him and doesn't really give him a fair shot in the beginning. But they're kind of in this forced proximity together, and they start to hang out all the time. Her boyfriend is all of a sudden taking all these trips out of town, so he's not there. He's neglecting her. And so her and Hawke have this insane sexual like chemistry, and like the tension and the angst in this is so next level. I gotta tell you, I mean, it is a warning. You can kind of tell from the way I'm setting this up. This does have cheating in it, but I didn't mind it. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, it's cheating, I'm not reading it. But it does depend on the book if I enjoy it or not. And I didn't mind it in this. I didn't really like the boyfriend, and things get revealed about him that are pretty bad. So you're kind of okay with it in the end. But like the angst in this was so big, because even like when they finally start having sex and kind of succumbing to their feelings, she has so much guilt, and he has to watch her with her boyfriend every day, and it's like brutal for him, because Hawke comes off as like this bad boy, whatever. I was in prison. She doesn't know why he was in prison. Nobody has said. But he's like this teddy bear on the inside that, you know, has just never really got the love that he deserved. And he is gone for our girl. Like, so he actually calls her Cole, because he didn't really like the Nick. And so he calls her Cole, and like that's just his name for her. And they just build this beautiful relationship. They always like spend like the mornings watching mafia movies together and like hanging out, and they have their coffees together. So they really build a beautiful friendship, but they're also so insanely attracted to each other. And the spice in this is so hot. So, but the thing that made this book phenomenal to me was Hawke. Like, Hawke is book boyfriend. He's going on probably my top 10 book boyfriends list now. I think I'm going to need to update that. Maybe I'll do an update before the end of the year of like my current book boyfriends, because Hawke fucking melted my heart. He's so swoon worthy. He does these like little things that show his care, and you may not like him, like think, oh, he's a slut or whatever, like it comes off like that in the beginning, but he's not. Like, he's so in love with her and gone for her, and the way he like talks to her, and They have these beautiful conversations. Like, I just loved Hawke, and this poor damaged boy has been through so much. When you find out why he was in prison and like what happened to him, it just breaks your heart. I got emotional. Like, I cried a couple times in this book, and it just blew me away. I love Hawke. There is an annoying thing of like a certain kind of like over the top villainy type of character that ends up happening in this. But I didn't mind it. It didn't take it down for me because I loved Hawke so much. Like, I loved him. I love him. So it is tough to see her continue to be with her boyfriend because really she's kind of stuck to like financially depend on him. She's moved to his town. His family like pretty much is like very influential in the town. And so she has no idea where to go. And then if she ends up leaving, and he finds out she's sleeping with Hawke, is Hawke going to be an issue because he's living in that house and now he has like, you know, his parole officer and she doesn't want to ruin anything for Hawke. So there's a lot going on here, but I fucking loved it. So I'm sure you guessed by now, but I ended up giving this one 6 stars. I just loved it. I found a new book boyfriend, literally bought it while I was reading it, and I love it. So thank you, Jen, because this is probably one of my favorite books that I've read out of my 12 Recs from 12 Friends this year. And I am so excited that I finally like read a Jescie Hall that like I'm in love with. So there's another book called Kid that is like his best friend that I really want to read, but I'm giving myself some time till I get to that one. I think he has like addiction issues and stuff. So that's going to be really hard to read. But phenomenal, 6 stars. I think I gave it 3.5 chilies because it's spicy, but it's like the perfect amount of spice. And there's just such a deeper emotional connection. So that's what's missing in like The Sovereign. That's here is like their friends, their soulmates. They like, you really believe they belong together. It's just beautiful. Like I said, I knew I was going to gush about that one. So then I listened to an audiobook. I listened to Dark Planet Warriors by Anna Carven. This was the first book in the Dark Planet Warriors series. I listened to this on Audible Plus. I think some of them might be leaving Audible Plus soon. So I wanted to read this first one to give it a try. But I do think some of them are leaving. But anyways, this is an alien romance, obviously. This is between Tarok and Abby. And Abby is actually a scientist, and she's kind of on this mining station. She helps like grow like the plants and stuff, and she's working there, and they're it's kind of like this floating mining station. And they get boarded by the Cordolians, which are a really badass, lethal type of alien species because their ship had a lot of damage to it in a fight. And so they are kind of forcing themselves on this mining station so they can get things fixed. And she kind of keeps running into this, you know, main guy, and he's kind of like the leader. They very much think, you know, humans are weak and they're the superior race and stuff, but he keeps being drawn to her. And she ends up needing kind of rescued. She gets really badly injured because these monsters got into the mining station. And so she was so badly injured that like the humans didn't have enough medical facility type of thing to fix it. She probably would never walk again. So he decides to take her with him so that he can heal her, you know, on his ship and with their facilities. And so she ends up getting taken and going with him. And we kind of find out, you know, they're probably fated mates. He's very much into her. But this one is really focused on lust. I didn't feel a lot of emotional connection in it. So that's why it didn't blow me away or anything. But I will definitely be continuing with the series. The heroine kind of annoyed me a little bit. You know, she's kind of too stupid to live. But they do find out that humans kind of have similar DNA to them so that they could actually mate with them, which they really need because they're having issues, you know, mating and having children. And so once the people higher ups like find out about this, like this empire or whatever, they like want her for like testing and probably want to go get more humans. And so he kind of like goes against them to keep her safe and keep her with him. And so that's kind of where we're at. I think it was okay. It just was sex with not a lot of connection. And so I'm definitely going to continue and see if it gets a little bit better though, because it wasn't bad. It was a good audiobook. I listened to it really quickly and had a decent time. So I ended up giving that one 3.5 stars and 3 chilies. Okay, so the last book I read was 9 Minutes by Beth Flynn. I saw Bestie Book Reviews talk about this a lot. I know they did a giveaway with this book, and so I was really interested because I did see it on Audible Plus. This is the one where I think the second and third book are in the series are going to be going away on Audible Plus soon. But I did find them all on AnyPlay. So if you have AnyPlay, you could get the audiobooks there. But this is the first book in the 9 Minutes series, and this is really interesting. I didn't know what to expect. I think it's kind of good to go in blind, but I'll kind of give you the bare minimums here because there are some crazy twists and turns, and the cliffhanger at the end will leave you shook. And like, I wanted to get the next book immediately, but I had to stick to my TBR. So in this, we have Ginny, and she gets kidnapped, basically taken when she's 15 by this biker and kind of gifted to the president of their MC kind of gang in Florida. Really, it turns out that guy that's the prez, you know, he's in his 30s and she's only 15, so you may have a lot of issues with this book. But he found her, seen her, and kind of wanted her. So there's more to that. I don't want to give anything away, but Grizz ends up being, he's like the leader, the prez of the MC, and he basically keeps her. She doesn't fight too hard against trying to get away and stuff. She doesn't come from a great home. It was kind of a bad situation. I mean, she was almost raped by somebody, you know, and her family didn't really do anything about it. So she's not really fighting to get back home, which is kind of crazy, but she is 15 when this starts, and, you know, it takes a while for him to even get with her sexually, but not that long. So if you have issues with underage stuff, you may not want to read this. But she ends up becoming friends with one of the MC members that's kind of closer to her age. His MC name was Grunt, and they really had a beautiful dynamic and sweet friendship, and I really loved his character. And so in this, you know, she's basically stays with them for a year. She ends up marrying Grizz. It has a crazy journey, but there's some dark content in this, obviously, with MC stuff. This was very different from any other MC romance I've read because, honestly, this didn't feel like full romance. It was kind of like the beginning of her story. I feel like there's so much more that's going to come in the second and third books. In the prologue, you're literally there at Grizz's, like, where he's going to be put to death. So I would say push past that prologue and keep reading because it's not, like, the book isn't what you're going to expect. There's so much more to it, and it's really crazy the journey that she goes on. And I can't really say a lot because you kind of want to go in blind on this, but there is some dark stuff because Grizz does some pretty fucked up things. He is a leader of a criminal organization. He does fucked up shit, but he really did love and care about Ginny, which he calls her Kit because she couldn't go by her regular name. But it's very interesting, kind of found family situation here, but the cliffhanger and like the twist at the end were crazy. Like I had to keep rewinding it. Like, what did I just hear? Like, it was crazy. So I cannot wait. I'm literally going to be reading the next 2 books in November for sure. So I gave this 5 stars. It's not a typical romance with like a perfect HEA. So I will say that. So that might scare you from reading it, but I think the full story will have an HEA and will have an interesting journey that it takes you on. So I was thinking about it and wanted to instantly go to the next book. So to me, that's a good book. So I did end up deciding to give this 5 stars. And really, there's not a lot of spice in this. I would say 1.5, whatever, maybe, because a lot of it's like closed doors. She just briefly mentions what happened. It's like not going into like the whole event or their sexual encounters, if that makes sense. So anyways, those are all the books that I read this week. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure you're subscribing to my channel. Set that notification reminder so you can see all my new videos. I'm trying to post videos at least 2 times a week. Sometimes I'm not the best, but I'm trying. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys on the next one.